Hello everyone, my name is Cody Dunlap, and this is my EDL 853 Module 3 video. I'm sitting down with 3 individuals within our school and interviewing them, specifically those within the special education department. Here in our district, I sat down with our building principal, which is also our superintendent, because we are a small 1A school, so he wears both hats, the special ed teacher, and a paraprofessional, one of 6 paraprofessionals that we have in our building. My principal's name is Mr. Geist. Our SPED teacher's name is Mrs. Bland, and the paraprofessional's name is Mrs. Prowse. So as far as child find procedures, the principal, in talking to him, he mentioned screeners, but he didn't talk about them in specificity. He made sure, though, as a principal would, made sure that that I knew in our talk that they were available online. And he talked about the parents' relation to those screeners as well. Mrs. Bland told me a little bit more in depth. Of course, she is in the line of fire, as you might say, as far as she is the one doing the heavy work as far as working with the screeners. And so she told me that it's given to our Tiger Tots, which is our 3-year-olds. It's a play-based model, so they don't really, think that they're taking a test, but they're really, being evaluated. Fine motor skills, gross motor skills, academic skills, social emotional skills. It's given to them. And then, because Mrs. Bland does most of that, her and our Title I teacher actually, the paraprofessional did not have a lot to say in this matter. I mean, she just didn't have an idea. She deals with them once they're in the program. And I wrote there that she has been a part of our school, employed by our co-op for the last 3 years. Talked about their most challenging part of their role in the special education process and department. From the principal, as you might expect, loads of paperwork. In fact, we talked, there was a specific case last year in which I happened to be in his office talking to him about something completely unrelated, and he just happened to show me a stack of papers and mentioned something about the special ed department, and so that was interesting to me. But he kind of talked about how it is a little bit unfortunate that we have to jump through so many hoops to get a student the support that they need. He also then talked about, as you would expect a superintendent to talk about, our budget, and talking about how the state of Kansas increased yet, but our cost went up quite a bit. For the SPED teacher, she talked about just being in meetings and telling parents that, we think that your child has a deficiency of some kind, and that's hard. And she's a parent, and she told me that she's a parent of 4, and 3 of them are school-aged, and she has no kids in the special ed department, but she can identify, and she can certainly sympathize, if that's the right word. And the paraprofessional kind of talked about behavioral problems, which have kind of spiked here in our district. And she kind of got onto a kind of a sidetrack, but I did appreciate she was talking about just her age and finding out that, these behavior problems, especially if they get physical, it's hard for her to react the same way, even though she's not reacting physically, to just be able to move and feel good, and at the end of the day, feeling drained, and so she talked about her age being a factor as part of her most challenging part of her role. most rewarding part of the job, and as you might expect, all three basically said the same thing. And so I can kind of breeze through this slide because they all talked about just how rewarding it is to see when the kids are growing and when they're making progress and when they're finally connecting the dots. That's the most rewarding part when they and when parents also, when they see that, my child just needed some support. They just needed a little bit of help, and now they're getting it, and they're soaring now. So advice for the supervision of the special ed department. Mr. Geist kind of talked about going to IEP meetings and meeting people on the SPED team that he'd never even seen before, because we have a co-op that services so many districts in our area. It's hard to really build relationships with certain members of the special ed team. Not necessarily our special ed teacher or the paras here, but the OT, the speech language pathologist, those kind of people that are not in our district every single day. It's hard to get to know them, really on a deep level. And he also talked about, just being able to swallow his pride and trust that the co-op was hiring the right people. And he said that kind of goes through the district as well as they hire paraprofessionals, because, they haven't always gone through formal training such as classroom and special education teachers have. The SPED teacher asked for a supervision for the supervisor of the special ed department to just know the ins and outs, to know the laws, to know when there's litigation involved, because it's hard in that department, she said, to follow that stuff when she's worried about, teaching the kids. So it's nice to have the supervisor recognize those. The para really just talked about the supervisor that we do have, Mr. Geist. He's firm, but he's caring, and he's compassionate, and it's nice to have that person working side by side as they build relationships together. This slide deals with effective working together with parents of those students that are in that department. Our principal was really quick to praise the special ed department, the adults there, and the parents in their communication, their collaboration. A lot of times we meet, and with students that I've had, we have to meet after school just to meet, times where parents are not working. Mrs. Bland, again, and I kind of know this because I work with her, and I've had students in my class that have been there. She has good communication with parents. She has Google Documents that she keeps behavioral plans in, and the parents have access to that. She also calls her emails if there's any problems that are more imminent. She also has IEP forms where the parents fill out things and give their own input as to their child's strengths, weaknesses, and things that we might not see at school. The para, Mrs. Prowse, she really deals a lot with the special ed teacher, not on supervisory things or head of that department things, but she talks about communicating really well. Again, Mrs. Bland communicates really well with her paras, and so they talk a lot about whatever children that they're dealing with and the specific needs that they have. So again, Mrs. Prowse said that she's not the one that actually deals with the parents, but she does commend Mrs. Bland on doing that and says she does a very, very nice job. Okay. As far as working with regular ed teachers, again, Mr. Geist was really complimentary on the collaboration that regular ed and the special ed teacher have. And he was just really positive. He didn't have a whole lot else to say about that. And Mrs. Bland, the special ed teacher, kind of echoed that same thing. She was talking about collaboration and how vital that was. And she talked about, focusing on the child, on the individual children, and letting our conversation drive us in that way. And the paraprofessional was, said just about, kind of what I thought she would. And, she truly, not in a negative way, but, she truly feels that she is a supplement to the regular ed classroom when she's in the room assisting, however. And then, there are times where she is doing, helping with pull-out time in where she is, after having collaborated with the regular ed teacher, is helping Mrs. Bland in the room during that child's pull-out time. So they gave, each of them gave me advice. And I've done assignments like this in the past. And so I've talked to Mr. Geist about this before. And he starts off with questions. Ask him, ask him, ask him. He talked about going to IEP meetings. He tries to hit every single one. And again, he's the superintendent principal. Again, we're not a huge school, but, there's a few kids that are identified and that are on individualized plans. And then just making sure that I keep up to date, if possible, on all of the SPED laws. And he said there's professional development out there, or workshops out there. And he said try to attend them if you can, especially when you're new, to get that knowledge. Mrs. Bland took a relational approach, and she talked about knowing strengths and weaknesses, and then she brought that back then to leading students. In that way, once you know your staff, kind of how they tick, how you can work together effectively to meet the needs of the students. And she kind of also, it was nice to hear, she talked about what an enjoyable environment we have here specifically for her and for the students that she services. The para, Mrs. Prowse, gave me two characteristics, I guess, and I appreciate them, and I just listed them in this presentation. She said, be patient, and she said, if you have a mentor, listen to him, talk to him, and soak up all that information. The role of the SPED teacher and the building principal. Mr. Guy said it's something that changes all the time. A lot of times he's playing peacemaker because the parents may want more classroom time, and the SPED teacher thinks they need to have more pull-out time, and so there's a constant battle there. But he said it is absolutely imperative that they work together. The SPED teacher talked about her job in relation to the regular ed classroom. She said, again, she's a supplement. She's there to aid, and she views Mr. Geist and the principal as being supportive, being hands-on, being there, being willing to be involved. And for the paraprofessional, Mrs. Prowse, she observed that she thinks that that Mrs. Bland and Mr. Geist are on the same page, and they share the same goals, and that they collaborate to meet those goals. And she specifically said to me that she noted that they both have that compassion for kids. So characteristics in aspiring administrators. Mr. Geist, again, he went towards the law, and he said, keep your district out of hot water. And he stressed that this would help the department out. The SPED teacher just wanted to be included in the building, whether that's, communicating. Administrators that are very hands-on are good, she said. And the paraprofessional listed off, again, some attributes, being attentive, caring, compassionate, and a nice educational and solid educational background. For me, going forward, my projections, I appreciated hearing from all three levels, I guess you might say, from the top, right in the heart of things, and then I guess someone on the lower end, even though that's not fair to say to a paraprofessional because they are so very important. But for me, I need to work on my collaboration strategies, make sure that I know how to work well with others. I need to know and be reminded of, look within myself to build professional relationships and strong ones at that. I need to know the law and stay up to date on that because it's ever changing, and also just care for kids, and that'll get me so far in knowing that they are the reason that we're here. Thank you.